Good morning. Welcome back to 1160 AM KBDT News Talk Sports. Don't miss Wayne Allen Root, raw and unfiltered, this afternoon from 5 until 8 p.m. only on 1160 AM KBDT News Talk Sports.
And we've got showers on and off. Keep your umbrella close by today. High of 62, low of 44. Currently at 8:34 a.m. JP, it is 59 degrees.
And traffic-wise, again, if you're coming over I-30 going into Dallas over the bridge, do be careful. Your traffic is slow. There's no accident to report. If you're coming into downtown Dallas, also do be careful as traffic gets slowed way down. If you're on 183 coming into downtown, I'm looking at it right now, and I can tell you that coming in, have a lot of patience. You're looking at a slow drive. If you're on 35, however, coming into downtown, everything looks clear. If you get a chance, you might want to exit 183 and just take about 2 blocks over and catch 35 to get you on downtown. All right. That's your traffic brought to you by JP, Kathy, and the crew. Super excited as always on Tuesdays. We have the mental health moment in studio. We have Patty Giolet.
You say that so fancy. And look, she sounds all sexy. Good morning.
Good morning,
With something for Kelly Foundation, we've got Steve Dunn with the Morgan Foundation. And I'm really excited about today's show.
Thank you. We are very
It's
excited
a big
about
show
today's
today.
show.
Yes.
Every week it seems like they keep getting better, and our guests today are no different. We have really some great people here.
Well, I'm going to let you welcome our guests and introduce them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Nice and loud.
Okay, we have Carol Burrell-Jackson and Purdie Burkes here this morning with us on the show. Good morning, folks. How are you today?
Oh, doing well.
Doing well, thank you.
We always like to start our show, our segment, explaining how expert and knowledgeable our guests are. So I'm going to start with you, Doctor, and allow you to introduce yourself, your background, and then we'll move on to Purdie, okay? Go ahead.
So, hello. I am a social worker by training. I got my master's in social work way back in '81 and a doctoral social work and anthropology degree from Michigan State. I've been in practice for 39 years and have worked with individuals, families, and groups, and juvenile delinquents, as well as families at risk of losing their children. Have a history of clinical supervision and clinical direction, and I'm currently at the Refuge as a trauma therapist, working with victims of trauma who have developed unhealthy coping strategies like substance abuse, eating disorders, isolation, and self-harm.
That's a very tremendously expert background, and we're going to talk about that maladaptive coping processes here shortly. Purdie, tell us about your background, please.
Okay, I am a disabled combat veteran. I've been suffering from PTSD for the last 10 years. I also have an associate's degree in criminal justice and a bachelor's in psychology with an emphasis on addictions and recovery. So right now, I am an admissions coordinator here at the Refuge. And what I do is assist families and clients in navigating the path to treatment here at the Refuge.
Well, we want to thank the Refuge for making you folks available for us because you have a lot to offer. And with this being Black History Month, we're trying to bring information out to our guests and our members and our crew about how the African American community is directly impacted by mental health. So could one of you talk a little bit about how that manifests in the community?
Well, the biggest way that it manifested is in depression and anxiety. Those are the most prevalent mental health issues that we see among African Americans. The other thing that is going on is that there has been an increase in suicides, and suicide can take very creative forms in the African American community because there is such a taboo against it. Some of you may have heard of the suicide by cop, which is a more kind of passive way of approaching suicide, but making sure that the end is the same. So yeah, those are the big things.
So Purdie, could you speak to that being in the law enforcement arena as well? How do police officers struggle with this knowledge and awareness that there are people out there that have an ideation towards suicide by cop?
Well, the first thing is entering into any situation, we have to assess those dangers going in, and no matter how stressful it is, try and keep an open mind in dealing with those individuals. We have to know that they are individuals and not just a sort of baggage-filled symptom and diagnoses. So treat people as individuals and remain open-minded as much as possible.
Are there signs that when you are on the job that somebody is anticipating suicide by cop? And what would you do if you saw those signs? What would that look like?
Well, usually there aren't any signs. Those are very, very quick decisions that are made, unless the family has made you aware before coming in that there has been some mental health issue prior to this meeting. And again, you have to, at that point, rely on training and your personal assessments of the situation. Every situation is different. Every person is different.
You mentioned that depression and suicide ideation are more common in the Black community. What do you attribute that to?
Well, in addition to just kind of the difficulties that we all encounter in hearing what we call the bad news on a daily basis, there's a layer of difficulty that many African Americans face, and that is what Dr. Pierce and Dr. Sue call microaggressions. And those things are daily indignities that we encounter based on race that are either intended or unintended. And they can be hostile, derogatory in nature. And those kind of, it's almost like death by a thousand pricks. Questions like being in the store, can you really afford that? Or suggesting that a person has gotten a position because they're Black. Or things like African Americans noticing that when they walk past someone, they're clutching their purse or the doors on the car lock as they approach. Those kinds of things we call microaggressions are things that many African Americans encounter daily, and they just have the effect, there's a cumulative effect of telling people that they are not valuable, that they're dangerous, that people don't trust them, and that can impact on a person's mental health and their psyche.
Dr. High, thanks. This is Stephen Dunn. With that in mind, we know as well that African Americans are less likely to receive guideline consistent care, that they're less included in research as well. Could you go into a bit into why that is occurring now as well?
I'm sorry, was that directed to me?
Doctor, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I think the reason is that we have this value in the African American communities to be cool and never let them see you sweat. And so there's certainly a tendency to present as if everything is fine. In the medical field, sometimes there is a presumption that African Americans don't have mental health problems and that we're all kind of happy and happy-go-lucky. And also, you're less likely to see African Americans in care because we tend to want to resolve our problems on our own, and we actually assume an emergency room approach to medical care, and we do it with mental health as well. When I was working up north in an outpatient setting, oftentimes the African Americans that came to us would come with the mental health equivalent of having an eyeball hanging out of the socket.
Wow.
By the time they were seeking help. And so when they do seek help, it's real critical to be immediate and responsive to the cry for help, because usually it's at that critical point.
Doctor, we know in various types of behavioral health, insurance companies often treat the condition as acute instead of chronic. And from what you just described, that sounds a lot like the same thing. What can we do to start to get the word out that mental health is something that needs to be done in a proactive, preventive and just a regular basis instead of waiting for the figurative eyeball to come out, of course?
Well, I think it may need to start at the policy level in terms of helping lawmakers to understand this so that practices can be put in place to attend to the matter early on. And then on the kind of micro or local level, it calls for educating the community that these are signs that you may need to get some help. Even in terms of just trying to normalize the idea of getting mental health help. As we're able to provide quality help too, I'm anticipating that word of mouth will get out. And actually that has been something that has happened in my past experience, that one person will get what they see as help and they'll tell somebody else. And then the next thing you know, folks are coming. But we need to get the word out and help the broader community to understand the issues and needs of African Americans related to their mental health.
Purdie, a few weeks ago, we had a great guest talking about the unique mental health issues faced by first responders. And one of the things that came out in that show was that stigma played such a big part in first responders not seeking help. Do we also find that is the case in the African American community as well? And if so, what can we do to start to address that?
Well, that is most certainly the case. With my own experience, I put off going to seek help for about 20 years until finally someone made me realize that if I didn't seek help at that time, that I would continue to spiral and it wasn't going to get any better. What we can do is try and begin to remove that stigma by beginning early education with children in school, letting them know that it's not a shameful thing to seek help. If we were able to pull together what we call movers and shakers in the African American community and have them put more images of African Americans as nurturers and caregivers, perhaps that would open some eyes and have a larger influx of students seeking positions in the mental health field, which would, of course, hopefully lead to more individuals seeking help because now they're seeing a caregiver who looks like themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is for either one or both or all of us here. What are the greatest barriers at this time to access to and the quality of care?
Well, I think one of the barriers is a general distrust of the mental health community. African Americans in their taboo against mental health services, I mean, the first time that's indicated, people say, well, I'm not crazy. And so there's this stigma attached to seeking help. Then going back, we've seen situations in which African Americans have been mistreated, specifically when you consider the Tuskegee health studies where Black men were unknowingly infected with the syphilis virus. So that, people are just reluctant to seek help because they don't want to be misused. Like I was saying before, there's a perception too that we don't have mental health problems. There's more of a tendency to criminalize mental illness among the Black community as opposed to see us as people genuinely needing help just as others.
And that's a perception, doctor, that must be changed, especially in today's climate.
Yes, for sure.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We continue the conversation with Dr. Jackson and Purdie Burkes through the break. You can catch it on our Facebook page at JP, Kathy, and the crew on our social media, or you can catch it later if you're having to step off to a meeting, because that's where we put all of our information. and you can hear it again on a recorded line through our JP, Kathy, and the Crew Facebook page. And so stay tuned as we continue the conversation. We'll also get you caught up with your traffic and your weather. And again, just looking outside, it looks like the haze is finally lifted.
Thank goodness, but it's still drizzling.
It's still
drizzling.
Is that a word?
Yes.
Drizzling?
Drizzling.
Grammar queen.
I'm from Texas.
I don't think so.
Drizzling. Okay.
Traffic and weather when we come back. All right, let's continue the conversation. I did want to, because nobody has asked this directly, and I've been kind of waiting for this to come out. I would like, if we can, to address some of the terminology, what it means, what the impact is, why it makes such an impact. And what I'm talking about are the microaggressions, the micro assaults, the micro insult.
And how does that play out?
And how does that all play out? How do we not allow that to happen? Because micro, of course, means small versus macro, meaning more global, right? And so we don't want that to happen. So how do we not, I guess a couple questions. One, how do we purposely stop it and bring it to the top and make it surface? Number two, how do we not do it unintentionally?
Well, I think if we can put ourselves in a position of having dialogue with people. Now, sometimes these microaggressions occur just in passing, like in the grocery store.
For example, doctor, what would be something in the grocery store that would happen, like a microaggression?
Okay, well, I'll tell you something that happened to me, and it was in a fragrance store.
Okay.
I was waiting to be waited on, and then a white family came in. I was in there for quite some time.
Right.
Then a white family came in, and the salesperson immediately went to wait on that white person before me.
Wow.
And what's interesting is microaggressions can occur across the same racial lines, because this person was African American. So after he waited on the family, I pointed it out to him.
Good for you.
That's what he did.
Good for you.
Well, I'm curious, what was his response, Dr. Jackson?
Yeah.
He was embarrassed and apologetic, and he wasn't even aware that it had happened. And so it's insidious, and so it's hard to detect. But what I actually have done with clients of mine that experience that, I tell them they have to pick their battles, because it does happen all the time.
Wow.
You have to identify when it's important, because otherwise you'd be challenging people the entire day.
So you've got tell your clients, pick and choose your times. That was obviously a time that your heart was like, I'm not going to let this go. It reminds me.
I thought it. Yes.
There's a song from one of my favorite songs, and I think this song rings true today. In Vogue, Free Your Mind. If you don't know that song, they're one of my favorite bands from back in the 90s. I had the biggest girl crush on all of them. Sorry, but I loved them.
Even Dr. Jackson is laughing with me here.
Well, okay.
So you do this every day, Dr. Jackson. I'm being microaggressed right now.
Yeah, I know. He needs help with me. But this, the words in that song, it's a great song, but the words still ring true today. So I'll
drawing a blank on that song.
You were busy getting educated. I was busy listening to the radio. So there you go. I'm going to have Patty and Steve send the song to you and listen to the words.
Right.
And you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay.
It really helps to know that the song was inspired by an ecstasy trip. So.
Well, no. I didn't do drugs. Oh, my God.
Now you just micro-insulted Kathy.
I'm not talking about her ecstasy trip. I'm talking about the songwriters.
No, not these ladies.
Never.
No, these not these. Do not dog my In Vogue. Those are some of the classiest ladies in
awesome
music.
Sauce.
Okay, yeah.
Squirrel.
Shut it down.
Hijacked.
Sorry, doctor. I will send that to you, and you'll see the words I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Oh goodness! Welcome to JP, Kathy, and the Crew. Oh no!
I tell you what, steroids is not good for you. We're shaking. No, we're not. We're 1160 a.m. KBDT News Talk Sports, and we are back. It is Tuesday morning. It's currently 8:54. Here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area,
We have got a high of 62 today, a low of 44, showers on and off, currently 59. Bring your umbrella.
we're here in the mental health moment. We've got something for Kelly Foundation, the Morgan Foundation, joining us, brought us just amazing guests, Dr. Jackson and Purdie Burkes. Thank you both for joining us. This conversation could easily be a 2-hour to 3-hour conversation, and it could easily be a 2-day seminar.
Yes.
Is what it could be. I mean, you know, it does. And I'm going to have, this is terrible. And I don't mean this to be this way. So if I have micro insulted you, I apologize. I would like us, though, to talk about micro assault, microaggression, micro insult.
Sure.
But I need you to, and this is going to be terrible, like 30 to 45 seconds. I know. Hit me.
Okay.
You can hit me later.
Okay. Okay. Micro assaults are intentionally calling a person related to their gender minority in terms of a derogatory slur. That's where the infamous N-word comes into play. A micro insult is a communication that subtly conveys some rudeness or insensitivity demeaning a person's racial heritage. Like, why don't you go back where you came from? And a micro invalidation is making a presumption about the group based on one person. That is, for example, assuming all black people know how to dance and sing. So just in a nutshell, those are some example of the broader microaggressions that I was talking about earlier. And it's not, I mean, it happens, and we have to be sensitive to it. And sometimes it may be a matter of asking someone, was what I said offensive to you? And when you have relationship with people, that's the kind of thing you can ask, hopefully, and get an honest answer. So I hope I summarized it.
No,
well.
that's
No,
good.
you did
to know.
well. You did
That's
very well.
I think you did do a very good job about that. And I think you also brought up a very good point. If you have a good relationship or a friendship with someone of color, you can come right out and say, did I say something that offended you? Or was that something that I was culturally unaware of? Because it's obvious. Not everybody walks in your shoes. I mean, it's the same with men and women. Sometimes somebody will say something to someone of the opposite gender and not realize that that was somewhat offensive. So what can we do to start to erase some of the barriers that are up between us and communication and reaching out to getting mental health? What are some of the barriers that we could, or how do we erase some of the barriers?
That last example is an example of what's called cultural humility. And it's not based on you knowing everything about another culture, but being willing to talk and ask the question. So assuming a stance of humility in relationship to others, and again, asking the questions, am I being offensive? I'm not. That's not my intent. Certainly, having representation, as Purdie had mentioned earlier, among mental health providers of folks of African American descent, seeing people that look like you makes it more attractive and appealing, which points to the need to recruit and hiring of diverse providers in mental health fields. Those are some of the ways that we can erase the barriers. And I guess the other way that we can do that in terms of increasing mental health care is reframing mental health, because the words themselves create a barrier at times. And so do you need somebody to talk to? You need somebody to lean on. Those might be words that we use. Might also use access points of the church, beauty shops, and barbershops, because one of the things that was found is that African Americans tend to seek help from doctors and clergy before they seek a mental health provider. So if we can get some dialogue going on between clergy and mental health providers to help that to happen. The other has to do with using social media to normalize the use of mental health services, and people coming out, so to speak, and talking about their own.
No. Did you finish your thought, Dr. Jackson?
Well, just having folks talk about their own experiences, and then just providing quality, culturally competent services will result in an increased word of mouth and increased involvement.
Sounds good.
So that's about it for me.
Well, Dr. Jackson and Purdie, if you could hang on for just a minute, we do continue the conversation
after the show
on our social media again, because the topic is a 2 to 3 hour conversation. and it's a 2 to 3 day seminar, easily. And so to be able to squeeze everything in a 15-minute, 17-minute, 20-minute segment is very difficult. But that's a lot of radio time, but it's still very difficult. Want to thank Something for Kelly Foundation. Want to thank the Morgan Foundation again for bringing us such amazing guests here on the Mental Health Moment.
Have a blessed day.
Catch us on JP, Kathy, and the crew on Facebook. All right. All right.
Perfect.
So
And
we're
we're
back.
still on Facebook Live. And this part, the Morgan Foundation, Steve has an individual who takes this and brings the entire, just the mental health section, including the post-show talk.
Doctor, I'm real excited about the subjects that you've brought up about how to normalize the conversation and the access points. I think that that's critically important, to go to where the people feel that they would be in a trusted and a safe environment. You talk about churches and barbershops. Any other spaces where you think would be especially effective for access points?
Well, barbershops, beauty shops, churches. I think restaurants where African Americans tend to frequent, the little carry-out places and the sit-down restaurants that are frequented by African Americans may be a good place.
Doctor, since you mentioned that they often go to their clergy first, even before medical doctors sometimes, is there some way that we should be connecting with clergy so that we can help them to understand and recognize times when people are in pain or in need of help? Because as you say, sometimes it's to a point of acute before they actually seek help.
Yes, and actually it points to the need to educate clergy on signs of mental health issues. Now, actually in my dissertation, I looked at the issue of help-seeking behaviors among church-going blacks and how much they use their clergy. And it pointed to, like I said, the need to educate clergy, but then on the other side of things, it also points to the need of educating mental health professionals on the importance of faith and religion on the part of many African Americans, because I think sometimes there's a disconnect between the two, with mental health providers tending to view religious figures with some disdain at times. Certainly, there's reason for that in some spaces in terms of misuses of power in the church, but being able to approach a clergy respecting their position and their faith background will be important, just as important as it would be for clergy to respect the skills and knowledge that mental health professionals provide. So there needs to be just a mutual respect and understanding between provider and clergy in order for them to work more closely together. And I have had that opportunity in the past to do so, working with, when I counseled Christian congregants, I've been able to establish relationships with other clergy. Of course, the other piece of things is I am also a clergy, and so I have a sense from both sides of what the issues and the needs are.
Purdie, as a former law enforcement officer, did you have a lot of exposure to SBC, and how prevalent is that now, of course?
Well, before answering that question, I would also like to interject on the integration of clergy and counseling, if I may. I am a member of the American Association of Christian Counselors, and I'm a certified Christian counselor. And that is becoming a very, very large congregation in itself. So we're having more clergy members who realize that there is a need for them to become versed in at least a bit of the problems that their congregants are facing. And so they are going back to school in many cases and getting certifications in the counseling realm. So that is beginning to be a thing. We just have to encourage it more. And in some cases, if the encouragement isn't working, we have to suggest it strongly. But it is a growing movement.
Yes.
Yes, that is very, very good to know. I know that there are some churches here in town who have, thousands and thousands of members, and they tend to, they began to have departments like that as well. But we're going to certainly do everything we can to make sure we get the word out on that very important point, of course.
Yeah. And
then I guess for one, the last things, if you wanted to address the suicide by cop issue,
yes,
we'd love to get your thoughts on that, of course.
Well,
two things. I'm sorry, Purdie.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, before we finish with that, I do want to say that it's another form of microaggression. Just some of the climate that we're encountering, it's actually getting to a macro level in terms of African Americans being killed by police officers in the course of regular stops and things like that. And that certainly also impacts mental health issues among African Americans in terms of being fearful of being stopped by police. Is this the time I'm going to die? And mothers being afraid for their sons and daughters and things like that. So there's that piece, and I think in terms of the suicide by cop, I want to defer to Purdie about that, but I wanted to put that in there.
Very good. Thank you.
Well, and if either one of y'all are able to go to our JP, Kathy, and the Crew Facebook feed, we've had several people, including a former police officer who said he learned a lot from the only 2 Black families that lived in his town that helped him be a better police officer. We have another lady, Cleo, who is, she's a breastfeeding specialist here in Dallas, and she's a regular guest co-host on our show. And she said that she sees women of color, and she's a woman of color, being treated worse by OBs when they're delivering their babies. So we would love to get some commentary if y'all have a chance to jump on the Facebook Live feed. We post it and make it public and shareable.
Okay. Will do. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. Thank y'all so much for coming on.
Thank you both. We really super appreciate it. It was awesome.
Thank you. It was a great session.
Yes.
Absolutely. And one last, and next week on the Mental Health Moment, we have 2 very special guests. And Patty, why don't you go into who they are?
The last week of February is traditionally recognized as Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And we are having 2 guests who we know as friends of eating disorder, Something for Kelly, and the Morgan Foundation return to the radio. One is Elisa Myers, who has been with us before. She is the Executive Director and CEO of the Academy for Eating Disorders. And the other one is Dr. Christine Pete. She is Executive Director of the National Center of Excellence for Eating Disorders in North Carolina. And we are inviting them in to talk about all of the great things that they are doing to advance research and treatment standards on eating disorders. It's going to be a really good show.
Absolutely.
All right.
And again, thank you to Kathy Ward and JP. Kathy, congratulations on your award from the Collins County Republicans this past weekend.
Yeah, I'm still on cloud 9. Well, this guy nominated me, so just thank
awesome.
y'all. I'm just I'm
outstanding.
just still blown away. Thank y'all. Yeah, I was moved to tears. Could barely speak. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson.
Thank y'all
you,
so
Purdie
much for
Burrell.
what y'all do.
Thank you.
Have a blessed
Y'all
day.
take care now.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And you as well.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. And there we go. And Kathy, you've got this, right?
Yes, I'm going to come over and hook you up with that, and then I'm busting a move myself.
Yeah, I got to get back to the house. I've got AT&T.